Bryan Norcross here with a late afternoon tropical update on Wednesday, July 29th. We're watching potential tropical cyclone 9 that still has not developed into a tropical storm, but there are signs that it is getting a little bit closer. Let's look at the satellite here. And you can see a band of thunderstorms, the bright white. See it coming around here like this? Now watch as it comes again. So it's in here. There's that band there. And if we look at the winds over here, we see them coming up and around. So that's more or less the center that's developing. That's still a big center, and it's too big, actually, to be a tropical storm. But in this, the thinking is that something in this area here might yet develop here in fairly short order. Now, on the radar, this is a long-range radar out of San Juan, and we can see that there's just no motion in this direction down to the bottom here. Everything is kind of moving. This up here is moving in this direction here. This down here is kind of moving in that direction. Everything has kind of an eastward move on it, and so there really is not the circulation that's going like that would be required for this to be a tropical storm, and it has to actually kind of unify. So if we don't have that, if we go back to the satellite, if we don't have that, if the system is going to end up here over Hispaniola, like up in here, or even going through the Mona Passage there, which some of the computer models had indicated this afternoon, and the center is kind of down in here somewhere, it's got to get moving in that direction at a pretty good clip. But all we see so far is generally a movement kind of off to the west or just a little bit north of west. So we're going to keep an eye on that and see if it really does lift on up to the north, which is what the National Hurricane Center forecast indicates. But that's based on the fact that it is going to indeed consolidate. So we'll see. Okay, here is the latest cone from the National Hurricane Center as of the 5 o'clock advisory. And you see the idea is that it runs right over the Dominican Republic. That there is a 10,000-foot mountain. There are a couple of very tall mountains there right in the middle of the country. And if the system does consolidate and create an organized center, which is what you need to do to get a tropical storm and to get it to actually intensify, then it's going to run into those mountains, and the idea is the wind speeds will get knocked down. The estimate is maybe 45 miles per hour. It can be knocked down more than that. But if it stays kind of an amorphous mess, and it's just a blob of moisture with this broad rotation, then the mountains don't make as much difference to it, and maybe that center stays a little farther to the south. Something like this, the center is not important. It's all that moisture already affecting the Caribbean islands, including Puerto Rico, and it's going to move into the Dominican Republic here pretty soon. Then, looking farther downstream, the latest cone brings it right over the Florida Peninsula, including here in South Florida. Now, the thinking on the intensity is if it gets knocked down on the mountains, and then it starts to rebuild a little bit. You notice the Hurricane Center brings it up to a 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm, although these are wild estimates given the fact that we have such a disorganized system at this point. And also in the upper atmosphere, there is some upper-level wind that is forecast here, which would be generally unfavorable. There's also some dust in the air. Combine all those things, it doesn't seem that this situation is conducive to big-time strengthening. Having said that, some of the models this afternoon show a pretty strong storm here riding to the right side of this cone up in here. I'm going to show some of those models to you here in just a second. So we're just going to continue to emphasize that since we don't have anything organized yet, there are mountains involved, there's just more uncertainty than even normal. And in disorganized systems, we always have significant uncertainty. All right, let's take a look at the models this afternoon, and let me sort these out for you here. This kind of orangey color where I put the X's, that's the European model. Now, we don't get kind of a plot of the European model, so we added this to the model plot. So the European model was taking the storm much farther south. Now, just this afternoon, has lifted it to the north. Not sure why. It does seem like it doesn't have a good handle on the current state of the storm. So We'll see on the later runs if it continues with that trend or not. The red one is the one you normally want to look at. That's the consensus model. If you're looking online, it's going to be called a TVCA or a TVCX. Look for the red ones. We call them CON-A for consensus A and consensus X, two slightly different ways of averaging the model. So the average is always better. That's what the National Hurricane Center looks at. Notice the average takes it over the Dominican Republic. So now moving ahead, you see that we have this cluster north of the Dominican Republic. And those are the ones, if it's north, generally they're stronger. They're over the water longer. They don't interact with the mountains as much. So the Hurricane Center has nudged it a little bit south over those mountains because of the extreme uncertainty here of exactly what's going on right now. And look at the euro. The euro is up here. Now, yesterday, or this morning actually, it was down here. It was much farther south. That's a big jump in just one model run difference. And then we get to Saturday and Sunday, and you see the consensus comes directly essentially over us. That's kind of the middle of the cone that the Hurricane Center uses. The European keeps it just offshore as a much stronger storm than the Hurricane Center is forecasting. And then some of these models over here, including the UK Met model, are weaker. So generally to the left of the cone is weaker, to the right of the cone is stronger. So the Hurricane Center is taking that compromise position, which actually brings it right up the peninsula and involves us here in South Florida. The important thing to stress that I said before, and I'm going to say it again, the center of the storm, which is what we're looking at here on the model, is not really the most important thing to look at. It's not about the center because the weather is spread out in this big system for a long way. And sometimes in the center, you don't even have the worst weather. Sometimes the worst weather is well displaced from the center. So mainly, the bottom line here is this thing is forecast to come in the direction of the peninsula of Florida, including South Florida. It's forecast to happen beginning late tomorrow night into Saturday morning. This dot up here is the Saturday morning dot right by us, and so the weather will deteriorate ahead of that, one would think. So this is not that far away. So here we have tomorrow morning, here we have Friday morning, and there we have Saturday morning, according to the plots that came in this afternoon. It's definitely hustling, if that's right, and that is much faster than the model was previously. So let's just see how all this plays out. Bottom line is tomorrow it's supposed to go over or near those mountains. So by tomorrow, late afternoon, we'll have an idea of whether that's happening or not, and that will be critical to this whole discussion. All right, we'll be back with more. Tune in here in the morning, and you'll have an update. I'm going to have a printed update, a text update, and then tomorrow through the day, of course, keep you up to date on video here with any changes. So until then, just stay informed. See you then.